Good evening, everyone. Another live on the buses question time. You know these. You know what you to do. Just post any questions you've got about on the buses. Can be about the TV series, the films, the actors, the buses, the filming locations, anything at all to do with on the buses. I'll answer them for you right here and now. I'll also go on to talk about the my plans for a walking tour weekend in Borehamwood, where the 3 spin-off films were made. I'll go into that in a little bit and a little while. So anybody with questions, you know what to do. Post up your questions on the screen and I'll answer them for you. See, on the buses, it's back on the telly as well. It's on ITV3 every morning at about, I think it's about 9:25. Okay, so the plans for the walking tour, I'll just go on to it right now while there's nobody around asking any questions. Evening, David. The plans for the walking tour is the potential date to pencil into your evening, Martin. Potential date to fill out the tweets and write into your diaries if you're interested will be Saturday the 18th, and Sunday the 19th of September. So 18th and 19th of September. The plans for that will be there'll be a walking tour on the Saturday, which is the 18th, and a walking tour on the Sunday, which is the 19th, all in Borehamwood. The first tour on the Saturday will be around Central and South East Borehamwood, taking about, probably around about 30 filming locations. On the Sunday is going to be taken in Central, North and Northeast locations in Borehamwood. Again, around about 30 filming locations will be covered on that. I might try and fit in something like an impromptu Q&A in our bar or pub somewhere if I can get round to doing that and providing us what numbers are like for it. And the cost of it will be £15 in total for the 2 tours over the 2 days. The tours will run for about, first guesstimate, I would say they'll be about 2.5 hours long, both tours. That'll include time for stopping, photographing, talking about certain locations. So it'll be like a 2.5 hour tour on the Saturday, a 2.5 hour tour on the Sunday. Now, for those of you that are coming from further afield than the London area, you need to stay in Borehamwood. There are hotels in Borehamwood. For those of you who are live in London, it would be possible, or London area, be possible for you to just do the tour on the Saturday, then go home and then travel back up to Borehamwood on Sunday and do it on the Sunday. If you wanted to do it that way, that would be good as well. But obviously I'll be coming down from Edinburgh for it. So I'll be staying in a hotel in Borehamwood for a couple of nights. So that's the plans for that. I'll post them all up on the buses, the filming locations now and then group as well. I'll post up all the details for that and see what the reaction and see what the interest is like. So any questions here about on the buses, pop them up now and ask away, or anything to do, any questions you've got about the event there that I've just announced plans for. I would probably recommend the Premier Inn, which is on Elstree Way. I think it's actually, you would need to, the actual address of it, I think, is Warwick Road in Boreham Wood. It's a bit out of town, but it's quite central. It's central enough, and it will be handy for where our first tour are planned to end it. It's not far from the Premier Inn anyway, so and the rooms are pretty decent in the Premier Inn as well. I know that because I stay there when I'm organising and holding the events in Boreham Wood that I organise. There are other hotels. The Ibis is closer to the town centre, probably slightly more expensive. Or there's a couple of travel lodges as well, which are a little bit further out than the Premier Inn, than the Ibis. Sorry. So it's up to yourself really what you prefer. If you prefer travel lodges, there's a couple there. One's on Studio Way, one's on Elstree Way. You've got Premier Inn, you've got Ibis. You've also got there used to be a Holiday Inn right out by the motorway. It's now been taken over. I'm not too sure what it is now. Hold on, I'll check and see. I think it might be I'm not sure if it's Innkeepers or something like that now. Just check and see just now. That's a Hilton, a Doubletree Hilton. It is out on the right by the side of the A1 motorway on the eastern boundary of Boreham Wood. So there are a few hotels there for you to consider, David. Or there is the more shabbier, like gets terrible reviews, is the hotel above the Waterstones, which is it's the Elstree Inn, but I certainly wouldn't recommend it. I've stayed in there one night, I think, and that's enough for me, I tell you. I had to stay there once because all the other rooms are booked up, I think, at the time that I was travelling. So, any questions at all to do with on the buses, ask them up. Anything more to do with the event that I've just announced there. And I'll be happy to answer them as well. Just to say, an old chestnut turned up again that annoys me on the on I don't know what it was. I think it was classic television, 60s and 70s. Somebody posted up a picture from Holiday on the Buses with Wally and Lily Briggs, like aka Arthur Mullard and Queenie Watts, and everyone piled in with a sort of like all these unfounded allegations against Arthur Mullard. I don't like seeing stuff like that, because basically there's two sides to every story, and charges have never been brought forward by the Arthur Mullard's daughter. She went to a newspaper, probably sold her story to the newspaper, but she never carried it forward with the police, which you've got to say, why didn't she do that? I'm not saying that she's lying or anything like that, but it's just that people are all people on Facebook and all of that are automatically assumed he's guilty, but he was never charged of anything like that. So I just find it a little bit off when people jump on the bandwagon and say automatically that they're guilty. Similar thing happened with the footballer that's been the Premier League footballer that supposedly has been speaking to police about speaking online with a juvenile or something like that. Someone revealed it on Facebook that it was an Everton player. I mean, they're defeating the cause totally by doing those sorts of things. But back to Arthur Mullard. There are a couple of sides to that story, because the story goes that the daughter that he supposedly was interfering with, if you know what I mean, was nursed him on his sick bed when he was dying. He was in his last few days, he was ill at home, and that daughter who supposedly he sexually abused was at his bedside until he died, nursing him. So, I mean, I find that a little bit odd that you're going to do something like that with somebody that's been supposedly molesting them, if you know what I mean. So that scratches my head and makes me wonder. Plus, there's the other side to it as well. When he died, now, if he had any remorse, Arthur Mullard, I think he had he left £250,000 to the Battersea Dogs and Cats Home. And I think his kids got £25,000. So to me, again, that looks like, well, that's a bit odd thing to do to dogs and cats homes. Fair enough if that's where he wants his money to go. But then again, do you think that might swell a little bit on this from the family members who only got £25,000? See, there's those little things like that play in my mind and just make me think, eye on them, and you know what I mean, and why she never went forward with the police and said, I want charges brought against them or anything like that. Plus, there was an elder member of the family who was one of their kids, and he said he never noticed anything untoward going on. So, again, there's two sides to every story. Because of someone comes out and says that such and such was sexually molesting me and all that, you've got to carry it out and go through the proper channels, in my opinion, rather than just that's why I don't like everyone jumping on the bandwagon and saying, oh, he was guilty, he's this, he's that, he's evil. You know what I mean? It's not really a dumb thing to do in my eyes, because he was never even charged, or it never even got to a court case or anything. I'm not saying that he was totally innocent, but on the same hand, you can't say that he's absolutely guilty either. Okay, so any questions, post them up and I'll answer them for you. Enough of my ramblings. So you must have some questions to ask about on the buses, anything that springs to mind. If you, as I say, any questions you've got about that walk-in tour that I've just announced plans for on the 18th and 19th of September, then go ahead and ask away as well. I do hope, although I've not been in the best of health lately, I've been out sort of work for a while, but I do hope to get that down to some of the newly found filming locations and photograph them sometime later on in the last quarter of the year. There are about a good fair few locations to go and visit and photograph. These are new locations that have just recently been found. For the channels, I'm just weighing up the pros and cons of doing another episode review. Hopefully I'll do one of them maybe in the next few weeks. So it'll be up to yourselves to decide whether you want to watch that or not. There's one already up. I know the sound quality wasn't all that great, but I have got a microphone and all that now. A better microphone, as you can tell. So next time around that I do it again, it'll probably be of far better quality. Okay, any questions on the buses? Ask away. Can be anything to do with the TV series or the films, or the actors, anything like that to do within on the buses, or cast, crew, filming locations. Nah, neither. She wasn't sacked, and she wasn't, and she didn't quit. The part for Mum was always intended for Dorothea. Dorothea, that was her part. Stuart Allen, who was a producer, before On the Buses started, they had decided on they wanted Dorothea for the part. The two writers, Ronnie Wolf, Ronnie Chesney, wanted her, and Reg Varney wanted her for the part of Mum. Stuart Allen went to her flat in Putney and Putney Bridge, where she lived at the time, offered her the part of Mum and On the Buses. A new series that was starting up at that time, obviously. She said she would have loved to have taken it, but unfortunately, she was going to be out of the country at the time when filming was starting. The filming dates couldn't be altered, so they had to get another actress in to play the part of Mum, which was Cicely Courtnidge, and decided on in the end. But obviously, they didn't know if it was going to be a hit or not. So once Series 1 took off and it got good viewing figures, and the second series got commissioned. By that time, Dorothea was back in the country, so Dorothea came in and took over the role which was intended for from series 2 onwards. So Cicely wasn't sacked, and she didn't quit. No, not just the ones that you see on Facebook. I've got badges. I think I've got my mugs up there. All the stuff that I've done. There's nothing really all that new kicking around. I've still got the globe lamps and stuff like that. Might do a special commemorative badge for the that's okay, helpful stuff. I might get like a special badges done for the walking tour event for anyone that's interested in that. I'll make do special designed ones for that. Okay, so any more questions, like helpful stuff done there, then post them up and ask away. It is a commonplace thing that with the helpful stuff come up with there, like about Cicely Courtnidge. The real honest proof of the matter with Cicely was that she wasn't as well versed in television work as Doris was. If you think about the how her TV series works, compared to Cicely was much more well versed in stage work and films. She hadn't really done a heck of a lot of TV work. TV work is different, where you've got a new script landing on your in your lap every week, and you've got to learn a new script every week, which takes a lot more sort of like practice to do than say a stage where you're working with the same script day in day out on stage, so it gets ingrained in your head. But TV's totally different. So I think that was our thing that they reckon that Cicely struggled with, was learning the scripts every week. But as I say, the role was always intended for Doris anyway. Reg Varney was adamant he wanted Doris for the part. And basically On the Buses was Reg Varney's show, really. I mean, it was written for him specifically by Ronnie Wolf and Ronnie Chesney. So what Reg Varney wanted, Reg Varney normally got, if you see what I mean. So keep those questions coming in. I'll answer them for you as soon as I see them. I am toying with an idea for the walking tour as well as doing something like a little souvenir pamphlet booklet thing. I'll see how that comes about. Been toying around with designs for that as well. So we'll see how that goes as well. Okay. So keep your questions coming in. I'll answer them as soon as I see them on the screen. Those of you that are here and are members of my Facebook group, the On the Buses from Locations Now and Then, I will start going through all the filming locations again from the TV series and films. I'll probably start that sometime, maybe in August, sometime late August into September, maybe. I'll start running through them all again. And anyone that can't wait, just look at my videos up here on this channel, because there's videos for the filming locations for series 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and same there's videos for the On the Buses film, Holiday on the Buses film, and Mutiny on the Buses film. It didn't happen because the funding fell through for it. It was going to be STV, Scottish Television, that was that took it on. You may say, why STV? Well, obviously, I think LWT probably would have turned it down. STV, thereafter, they went, Ronnie Wolf and Ronnie Chesney headed to STV because there was a man there that was executive producer at the time called Brian Izzard. Now, Brian Izzard had worked on Holiday on the Buses as a producer stroke director, as he did on the series 7 episodes of On the Buses. So he was a man who knew On the Buses well, knew the strengths of it and all that. So Ronnie Wolf, Ronnie Chesney went up there with it, and STV took it on. But the problem with it is the funding fell through for it. Funding got spent on frittered away on other projects, other stuff, and there wasn't enough money to put it into production. So that's why it didn't come about. They probably continued trying, and I mean that was around about 91. But then around that time would have been when Michael Robbins began his fight against cancer, and that probably would have put it on hold anyway, even if the funding hadn't been raised. So sadly, it just wasn't destined to be, I would say. But that was the reason it didn't happen, was that the funding fell through for it. That comes from Anna Karen herself, by the way. Anna Karen told me that. So if you've got any more questions, just post them up and ask away, like helpful stuff's done there. So just going on, I'll go back to these walking tours. So Saturday, the plan is to do a central Boreham Wood and southeast Boreham Wood location. So that would take in your locations such as the gasworks site, the Butler House, Turnaround Betty's house, the manhole cover that Olive gets stuck down, where also the manhole cover where the dartboard rolls down the road and falls into, the scenes where the motorbike getting towed by the bus, the runaway when the handlebars get pulled off the bus as well. That scene. Also, the scene when Olive's on her way to the bus depot and Mutiny on the Buses. Also, the scene where the laundrette, the famous laundrette scene, that would be taken in on the Saturday. Also, take you down and show you the where they filmed the scene where Stan's knocking down the supposedly the depot at the end of Holiday on the Buses. Sorry. So that's that and a lot more will be covered on the Saturday tour. On the Sunday tour, that will take in locations such as the road that the buses call it coming down in the end credits of On the Buses. It'll also take in the row of shops that the bus comes down when the spiders are crawling up the women bus drivers' legs. It'll also take in the row of shops that Mum standing outside at the start of the first film. It also takes in the bus tour, the detour bus. The detour the bus goes on, goes in round like a housing estate. It'll take you around that. Also, I'll be going into we'll be going up to the scene where Blakey gets splashed. Yeah, Reg would have been the highest paid, Les. It's hard to really ascertain how much it actually got. I would say probably Reg was the highest paid. He would have probably been on about maybe £500 an episode or something like that. Might not sound a lot, but at the end of for the first series, that would have been like £3,500 for like 6 weeks work, 7 weeks work, not even 2 months work, which is a heck of a lot more than what your average person was earning around that time, I can tell you. The rest would have been on sort of like lower. Doris would have probably been the second highest paid because she was the obviously most renowned out of the rest of the cast. Probably she might have been on something around about £300. And thereafter you would have had probably Bob Grant, Stephen Lewis maybe on about 250. Michael on maybe 200, maybe Anna might have been paid the least at the start, but Anna probably would have come up as her star grew and her worth grew, if you know what I mean. Her wage would have increased through time. If you mean the likes of Tony, if you mean the likes of like the rest of the On the Buses cast, then it's all really down to why they didn't. Obviously, I would say that the cast were busy with other projects at that time. Didn't see the value of doing it, basically. And how would you fit them in anyway? Because it's sort of like they maybe didn't want to go totally down to making it too much like On the Buses, if you see what I mean. So we'd imagine that's why there wasn't any of the other cast in there. It would be difficult to get them really out there anyway, where it was supposed to be set in Spain. Hi, Nicholas. Down the Gate, it wasn't bad, but for me, for my sitcoms, they need to have a really strong cast of strong comedy characters, if you know what I mean, and it didn't really have it. It's watchable. It's not the worst sitcom ever, but where it fell flat was it was only really Reg holding it up, if you see what I mean, in terms of the funny characters. So for me, all through, and my personal taste, I find that the sitcoms I really enjoy are the ones with the really funny, a large amount of funny characters. On the Buses, obviously, it's got 6 main funny characters there. No, I don't think so, Tony. I don't see that they'll bring it out on Blu-ray. I mean, there's plenty of other bigger sitcoms that haven't been brought out on Blu-ray. Don't Drink the Water's not exactly a marquee sitcom anyway, if you know what I mean. I mean, On the Buses isn't even out on Blu-ray yet, so I can't see that Don't Drink the Water will come out on Blu-ray, if you see what I'm saying. think it's just a case of feel thankful that they even got the DVD release, if you see what I mean. Because it wasn't all that highly thought of, if you know what I mean. It's not, again, like down the gate, it's not the worst sitcom, but it's certainly a lot of other sitcoms, better sitcoms. Nah, Tony, they won't do any remakes of Don't Drink the Water for the simple reason the same as On the Buses. Yeah, it might be yours, Tony, but if you do the basic spread your net around and find out what opinions on it are, and it's not really doesn't get there's not a great opinion of it and out there in the realm, if you know what I mean. Even On the Buses fans will say it's not as good as, nowhere near as good as On the Buses, if you see what I mean. I mean, from what I've seen of it anyway, again, I go back to that thing that I said. To me, it's got to have a whole, for me to really like a sitcom, it's got to have a big cast of funny characters. And that doesn't have it, because who did you have in it? You had Stephen, you had Pat, and that was it basically. You had Derek Griffiths now and again popping in, but I didn't find this character all that funny at all, really. So that was it. Yeah, but he wasn't. He didn't add anything to the humour, in my opinion. If you see what I mean. I mean, if you look at all my favourite sitcoms are like On the Buses, Porridge. Loads of funny characters in Porridge. Man About the House, loads of funny characters in that. Only Fools and Horses, loads of funny characters in that. Still Game, loads of funny characters in that. The only ones that Rise and Damper like as well, loads of funny characters in that. The only one that really bucks the trend on that front for me is Spectre and Son, which I think's great, because that's only really got the two main cast members in it, which are Harold and Albert Steptoe, obviously. I mean, there's lots, as I said, there's lots of sitcoms that have not even made it out on DVD that were really popular. Don't Drink the Water wasn't a hit. It wasn't a popular comedy. Nah, not Don't Drink the Water, because it was mostly all filmed on the set anyway. They didn't go to Spain or anything like that. It was all studio set for Don't Drink the Water. It was all filmed studio, and they used like stock footage a lot of the time as well for Don't Drink the Water. And as I say, for me, when somebody asked me, I don't know if it was yourself, but somebody was asking me if I was going to do filming locations as well for Love Thy Neighbour and stuff like that. And for me, it's got to be something that I love, for me to put my heart and soul into it, to go to the trouble of visiting it, to hunting it down, to confirming it and all of that. That takes dedication to the cause, if you see what I mean. And to have dedication to the cause, you've got to have a real empathy, a real love of that series or whatever it was, if you see what I mean. I mean, there's sitcoms out there that obviously they haven't done all the filming locations to as well, but that's down to the fans themselves. There are ways to do it. As I say, Doctor on the Go. It was okay. Yeah, I could watch it. It was okay. Had quite a decent cast in that as well, because you had like Barry Evans, you had Richard O'Sullivan was in some of them as well, wasn't he? So you had quite a good sort of like a cast for them. Watchable. Don't get really repeated all that much now though on telly, did they? They did about maybe was a time that they were on maybe about 3-4 years ago. Yeah, I got your gist of the Doctor series sort of films. Yeah. Problem with that is helpful stuff. I wouldn't want to see a new film made, so I'm sort of defeating the cause straight away, if you see what I mean. And it wouldn't be made anyway because, as I've said before on here, Ronnie Wolf and Ronnie Chesney hold the rights. Obviously, they passed away, so the estate of Ronnie Wolf and Ronnie Chesney hold it now. And obviously, it's been put into it that it's only for it was only down to the cast: Reg, Bob, Doris, Stephen, Michael, Anna, that really made it what it was. They when they attended my events, they were asked many times about saying, "Do you think there'd be a remake on the buses?" And they said, "No, no, it should never happen because the people behind it were the cast were the reason it was so successful." So there you have it. The rights will not be released up for a new film. And today, who would play Stan? I couldn't even think of anybody because the comedy today is so dire. I mean, I'd struggle to think of a really good comedy actor that I could think of that would be able to get that all together. If you think six, you're going to have to find 6 actors that are all going to fit into those sorts of roles. So yeah, and it never will get made anyway. I don't like to sound negative for all, but I mean, in my opinion, anyway, remakes don't work. I'm sorry, but you could go through the history, not just comedy films, any films. Remakes stink to high heaven. They stink the place out. I could be here forever reeling off the amount of remakes that there are that are an absolute travesty of justice. All that they are is trying to feed off the success of the original film and thinking that they can do it without having to be creative to make a film of their own with their own imagination. They think they'll take an old film that was a big success, buy up the rights to it, and they'll have a hit themselves. It doesn't work like that. Yeah, Lee, I liked Mind Your Language. I liked it, I would say, more when it was on, but when I've watched repeats, not recently, I think I got the box set and I watched a couple on. I got a box set in a second-hand shop or something, and it just wasn't as funny as I remembered it. But I enjoyed it. I remember really enjoying it when it was originally on, Lee. Yeah, there's still bits like that, Tony, around, isn't there? Bits of history and all of that for you if you look hard enough. It's all about looking hard enough, but there are bits and bobs like that, just like Caxton Hall in Westminster. That's where Bob got married. I think Michael Robbins got married there as well, and it's just sort of like a stone's throw from the Houses of Parliament. It's not really changed at all. The steps are still there that you get where a lot of the photographs are around on places like Rex and things like that of Bob and when he married Kim Benwell, and also ones where Michael married Hal Dyer. They're all taken outside the steps, down at the bottom of the steps. Yeah, but certainly, hi Neil, good to see you here. But as I said, remakes to me are just a total and absolute no-no in my book. I mean, I could run off lots and lots of remakes, and I'll challenge anyone here to name one remake that has been as anywhere near worth watching in the last like 50 years or something like that. Obviously, you've got ones like Ben-Hur, because Ben-Hur was remade with Charlton Heston, but it was originally 1927 or something like that was the original film of it. So obviously people remember the Charlton Heston one obviously more than the actual original. So that is one of the rare ones, if you know what I mean. Oh, most probably, Anthony, it would have been, I think, if Netflix or Amazon or any of the channels like that were around, I think there's a good chance it would have been, a very good chance. I have my doubts about whether it would have been successful. The only reason I would have liked to have seen it being made was it might have made a difference to Bob Grant. But apart from that, having seen the script for it and all of that, and then they were adding kids in, which is my pet hate. When you bring kids into something where there was no kids, if you see what I mean, apart from the like George and Mildred, there's a kid in that, which was great because he added to the comedy on it. But most of the time, like look at the kids that they brought into Only Fools and Horses. You had what's his name, Damien, which was a travesty of justice. Really, there was no humour in that character whatsoever. Bringing kids into an environment where there was no kids, and that's where you start watering it down. Obviously, I think the reason that they would have done it, and they did do it, is because they knew that the actors then, like Reg would have been 70. I think Doris was 80, just over 80. So obviously they couldn't do the same sort of workload as they couldn't do the same sort of workload as they had done back in the 70s. I think it was just the wrong time for it as well. If it had been maybe around about 5 years earlier when they were a little bit younger, there would have been more than 5 or 10 years earlier. But then again, 10 years earlier than that, and you were running into a time when Reg was having health problems then. He had a series of strokes and a serious heart attack in the early 1980s. So it wouldn't really have worked then either if they had have come about, had have tried bringing it back then, if you see what I mean. Yeah, there's many that would have been a good clippy, Martin. It was a sort of role that was sort of tailor-made for any sort of like attractive women around that time, I suppose. And there was a lot going about, wasn't there, on telly that they obviously never made it into on the buses. Yeah, just going by, Anthony. Cheers, Anthony. It's just going by. I've seen the script, and the script isn't really what I would have liked to have seen if they were making a comeback with it, because it wasn't set around a bus depot anymore, where they were in the good old days, shall we say. So it would have lost an edge on that half of it straight away. Plus, as I say, bringing kids into the environment and all of that just totally would have ruined the dynamics, I think, in my opinion. And obviously, the cast were getting on a bit, they were getting older. I mean, it was hard enough making it believable when Reg was in his 40s chasing after birds, but he certainly couldn't be doing it when he was in his 70s. Well, he wouldn't have been doing it anyway, because the storyline was that it was he had a, was it he was either married or he had a sort of like a I think he had either married or he had a girlfriend that had kids by or something like that. So it's sort of like that element would have been taken out of it as well. Wouldn't have been any of him chasing after women. So it would have been a lot different from the omnibuses that we all know and love, obviously. No, Reg was available, helpful stuff. There's no doubt about that, because that's who they wrote it with and who they had in mind for it. Always, it was always going to be Reg Varney that would have played the part. I don't think if for some absolute weird reason Reg wasn't available, it wouldn't have happened. They had already pitched the idea to Reg, the writers, and he was up for it straight away. So that was it. It was signed and sealed that it was Reg, if you know what I mean, that was going to play the part. LWT weren't keen on them. They for some reason they weren't keen on them. But the way that the writers got the man is, I think they put the LWT wanted their top three who they wanted to play the part of Stan, and they were very smart because they put Ronnie Barker at the top of the pile, who was at BBC at the time. So they knew that LWT, with a newly fledgling started company who were short on cash, were never going to have the money or the financial clout to prize Ronnie Barker away from the BBC. And the number 2 slot was Reg Varney, so that's how they got Reg Varney, because he was the highest up on their list. I think number 3 they had somebody else like not sure who the number 3 was, some other comedy actor of that time. No, well, that's another reason as well, Nicholas. As you say, that's another reason as well why it wouldn't work today anyway, because the whole world is a totally different place. It's like they keep coming up with these every few years, every dozen rounds, as or the Carry On films are coming back, if you see what I mean. No, that was helpful stuff. That wasn't a realistic. What you got to understand is the 2 writers always knew Reg Varney was going to get the part, and they always wanted him for the part. But LWT said, "Can you give us our your top 3?" Because the writers knew they want all that. They got the gist. They want all that keen on Reg Varney, so they put Ronnie Barker in there, knowing that that was never going to happen because LWT couldn't pay the money for them anyway. But it was just a name that they flung in there anyway, was at the top of the pile, if you see what I mean. There's absolutely no intention and no way that Ronnie Barker was ever going to play Stan on the buses. It was just the writer's smart way of getting Reg Varney into the role, if you see what I mean. Yeah, there's no such thing in my mind as no such thing in my mind as a good remake, if you know what I mean. You just need to look at the mess up they made of the Sweeney when the Ray Winston tried doing a remake, didn't they? They tried doing a remake of the Sweeney in the phones, and it was absolutely junk. I'll soon be able to tell you who the other person was. It's beginning to annoy me slightly. Hold on a tick. I'll soon find out for you who this third person was that in the list that we were looking at. There you go. It was Ronnie Barker at number 1 they put in the list. Number 2, Reg Varney, and number 3, Bernard Cribbins. So that was the 3 that they put into LWT. That's from Ronnie Wolf's book here, My Life and Memoirs. But it's like Nicholas said there, that's another reason for the likes of On the Buses, and then keeps coming and doing the rounds is every 3 years you get the story that the Carry On films are coming back. But sorry, but we're living in an age where it's totally non-PC humour is an absolute no-no. On the Buses thrived on non-PC humour, and the Carry On films did as well. So how are they going to? How exactly is that going to happen? It just can't, and not in this day and age. And if it can't happen, then it means that the whole product is getting changed. So you may as well just forget it. And it just sort of like it's now, as I said, the remake is not happening anyway. Wouldn't happen anyway because Ronnie Wolf, Ronnie Chesney both stipulated no, you could never have a remake. Simple as, because the people that made On the Buses work, well, obviously, sadly, are no longer with us apart from Anna, obviously. So it's just a big no-no anyway. And as I say, it's like there's so many other reasons that On the Buses wouldn't work today for the reason that Nicholas pointed out about this. We live in a non-PC era. So how are you going to get two middle-aged blokes chasing after clippies and all of that, and with a non-PC humour that was used in it, to transfer into today's day and age? It wouldn't even get onto telly. It wouldn't even get onto the telly if they were to make a pilot episode of it without being totally butchered and being told to change the content and all that. The only way it would really work, and the terms of that, is same with the Carry On films. If wanted to bring them back, they would have to set them a bit like Life on Mars managed it, set it back in the 1970s and set the Carry On films back, make them period pieces from back in the 70s or further back than that. That's the only way that it would work, is having them set like that. And then you run into this problem that you've got to Photoshop out a whole load of the new buildings that you got in skylines. If they're doing filming locations, you've got to Photoshop out or close off the roads so that no new cars can be seen coming along. Total absolute no-brainer, really. It's just never going to happen. So keep your questions coming in. Got any more questions? Post them up and ask away. Any questions you've got on the walking tour that I released earlier, the details for, just post them up and I'll answer them as soon as I see them on the screen. It'd probably be someone like Jack, I would think, Tony. He had all the fun with all the birds and all that. But my favourite character on the buses was Arthur. Probably be Stephen's character, I would say, and Don't Drink the Water. Yeah, there was plenty of reasons for why it really worked, Anthony. If you think about it, as you say, the scripts were just superbly written, especially the ones with Ronnie Wolf and Ronnie Chesney. I think it lost a little bit once Ronnie Wolf and Ronnie Chesney stopped producing the scripts. That was in the late um, part of late of Series Five. Um, but yeah, and the characters and the cast all played the characters so well. Plus, as well, you got to remember the reason it was so successful was the um, um, it was set around buses that everybody knew something about buses. They all around that time they all travelled. We all travelled on bus. A lot of people travelled on buses everywhere. So it's something that the working day people were familiar with, and it also catered for stuff then that working day people were actually going through, like the financial strife that families were under at that time. It was covered in episodes stuff like decimalisation, which put people toiled with at that time. Also, the conflict between management and the unions, if you see what I mean, which was very prevalent in the early 70s. So there's a lot of reasons why it rang a bell with the public as well, if you see what I mean. No, yeah, you can't. The only one that I can think of helpful stuff is the only sort of like one, as I say, I mentioned it was Ben Hur that I can think of. Was obviously it was first made in 1927, but people will always remember the Charlton Heston version, which came in 1956 or 58 or something like that. So that is one that probably outshone its original film, but that's like the only one that I can think of, if you see what I mean. And you think how many remakes there has been throughout history, and it's just it just proves that remakes really don't work. That's a good question, Les. Let me think about that. Obviously, you had in the TV series, you had Eupha Joyce, who went on to be in Man About the House and George and Mildred. So she went on to bigger things, obviously, Eupha Joyce. John Lyons as well. There's John Lyons. He was in about half a dozen episodes. He went on to be, obviously, alongside many years later, the sidekick of Inspector Morse. Was it Frost? I can't get him mixed up. Frost, it was Frost, a touch of Frost he was in. He played DS Tulin. John Lyons that was, so big stardom there for him. Obviously, that's what he mostly gets remembered for now, I would say, as part in Touch of Frost, but he was in a few episodes of On the Buses in the early days. Trying to think of others. Let's see now. Of course, you had Kate Williams as well. Kate Williams went on to be in more of like Love Thy Neighbor, and it was a big hit for her. So you had Kate Williams, I suppose, as well that you could throw in there before she actually went on to be in Love Thy Neighbor. That was. Um, so they're ones that probably who went on to bigger things, I would say, Les. Just thinking of the ones that were well known at the time that appeared. Probably people like Campbell Singer, who played the lodger. Remember, he was like working for the depot, and he came in, moved into the house. He had been a big, well-known actor for a few years. So Campbell Singer would probably be one who was like well-known, if you see what I mean. Um, Yeah, Wilfred Rambo. Yeah, that's right. Obviously, yeah, been a big star as well in that, and there, and the Steptoes obviously leading into that. If you're talking about the films, thinking of the films now. Well, obviously you had David Lodge as well. You had small parts in the films, but he did have bigger roles in the earlier 60s. Obviously, he'd been in a lot of films with Peter Sellers, a lot of comedy films in the early 60s. So David Lodge is certainly one as well, who had was quite a big star at that time. So David Lodge is one. And obviously as well in that you had Henry McGee, who was quite big with Benny Hill around that time, go on to be in with Benny Hill as his sidekick in the Benny Hill show. That was in Holiday on the Buses. Henry McGee was in. That was Brew It Yourself, helpful stuff. The episodes with making homebrew. It wasn't Arthur. He didn't want anything to do with it until he tasted it. It was only Reg. It was making Reg and Jack that were making the homebrew. Not Reg and Jack. Stan and Jack. Sorry. Nah, the Bottle Boys was a load of rubbish. I think that's quite commonplace. It ends up in amongst the least funny sitcom of all time. Bottle Boys. It's only really remembered with any affection for the catchy theme tune that it had. But apart from that, really pretty goddamn awful, if truth be told. Just while you're here as well, I hope enjoying the question time. But if you haven't already, just remember and subscribe, because anytime that I'm on live, anytime like this, I will you will get a sort of like a message in your YouTube account with it is saying that I'm on live. If you click to in your settings, and so you won't miss any other live times like this that I'm on, if you see what I mean. The more members, the better. I'm up to 494 members now, subscribers. 495, sorry. So get up to 1,000, and then that's it. And can actually start squeezing money from YouTube then for every time somebody's viewing my videos. So get to 1,000 members. I'm nearly halfway there now. I'm up to 495. So keep your questions coming in. Answer them as soon as I see them. Nah, that won't happen, Anthony. There was, now that you mention it, there was like about maybe like 6 months ago, 6 months, maybe the beginning of this year, the end of last year, there was some person that was going around on Facebook and on Twitter as well, saying that it was behind the release of the films on Blu-ray. and something smelt to high heaven about it. It really did smell, because the people that own the rights to the films are Studio Canal Plus. So on contacting Studio Canal Plus, they said we've got no plans at all to release it on Blu-ray. But then there's this random rogue person insisting that they've got extras for their films and all that on Blu-ray. So it was obvious what this person was doing. He was planning on bringing out bootlegged pirate copies, supposedly on Blu-ray, if you see what I mean. When he got called out for that, he closed down all his Twitter account and all of that, and went silent. When someone said to him, "Well, can you explain why Studio Canal Plus, who own the rights, have no knowledge of this release?" And that was it. It was all silence then. I can guarantee that I'm pretty certain that you won't get a release on of that on Blu-ray. I know, because I've had contacts with Studio Canal Plus. Me and my colleague who organised On the Buses event, we put it to them about releasing it for the 50th anniversary. So that was like a couple of years ago of On the Buses. And they weren't keen on it then at all. And what better of a occasion are you going to get it when you've got 50 years of On the Buses as well? And they weren't keen on it then. They said there just wasn't a market for it. So I cannot see them bringing it out now, 2 years later, just after they had said that there was no market for it. So I can't see it happening myself. I'd like to see it happen, but I can't see it happening. So if you've got any questions, keep them coming in. Anything to do with On the Buses, can be about film locations as well. Nobody's asking any questions about film locations. Obviously, I've given you the details earlier on about the possibilities of a walking tour in Boreham Wood and towards the end of September. Obviously, I organise the events in Boreham Wood as well, which are the ones where all the celebrities attend. But that's not going to happen this year, obviously, because of the situation with COVID and all that. It's always summertime that we tend to organise that for, but hopefully the situation will improve a great deal for next year, and things will be back to a semblance of normality by next summer. No, they hadn't, but my service is always here, you know what I mean? If anybody would be interested in listening, obviously I've got a couple of up on the channel there where I've done commentaries for the first two films of On the Buses, if you see what I mean. But nobody's contacted me for the studios or anything like that from Studio Canal Plus. I think it's a shame, really, because it's an opportunity that's soon be gone forever. Because obviously you've still got Anna. I'm sure if the money was right, Anna would jump in and do commentaries for the films. I'd offer my services. You've got other people as well out there who were obviously in the films. You've got the likes of Kate Williams, who was in Holiday on the Buses, and Sandra Ryan in Holiday on the Buses. Who still possess a bit of memories about working on them. Second film, you've still got Caroline Dowdswell still with us, but I'm not sure how much input she would have be able to put into it. There are a couple of blokes that are runners as well who have a lot of information about the films that they worked on. which you could always ask as well. So there are people out there. Yeah, it would have been put more on the lines of if I was doing a BBC series, obviously, Les, for getting onto radio shows. A lot of the cast did, like, especially the likes of Bob Grant, done a number of radio shows, not on the buses, but radio serials and all that in the 70s up and into the 80s as well, and in the 60s, and that was Bob Grant sort of thing as well. So keep your questions coming in. Got any more questions? Just post them up. Can be about the filming locations as well. If you've ever wondered where a certain scene was filmed, just ask away and I'll answer for you. Yeah, Reg had had a license. He was uninsured though, if you see what I mean. So, but he did have a license to drive a bus on public roads. But don't be mistaken thinking he was darting the bus all over the place. And the scenes that you see, that would have been professional bus drivers doing that sort of work. So keep your questions coming in. If you've got any more questions, post them up and I'll answer them for you as soon as I see them on the screen. I'll say that helpful stuff, going back to your point there about license to drive a bus. It's all very well having their license, but and scenes where they had to have like passengers and inverted commas on the bus, Reg couldn't drive a bus then because if he had an accident and anybody on that bus got injured during filming, London Weekend would have got fined thousands of pounds. Same with Hammer and the films. Hammer Films would have been fined thousands of pounds for letting a non-licensed, uninsured driver drive a bus. So that's why they use professional bus drivers for most of the more arduous scenes, like Reg. In terms of, I'm not saying that he never drove the bus at all.
Reg would have driven the bus. There's a few scenes that you see him in the TV series when he's driving the bus back into the depot. And in the depot shots, they were all studio sets, obviously, not an actual bus depot. When you see the bus slowly pulling away, that would have been Reg driving it. Or when you see the bus coming back into the depot, that would have been Reg driving it then, just when it's going at slow speed and all of that. You just need to look at the films when you see the bus knocking down the bus shelter in the first film and the telephone box. That is all done by back projection. So it's actually just Reg in his driver's seat, and they've got a moving image going past his window that's been filmed at an earlier time, if you see what I mean. Obviously, the act of reversing into the bus shelter and knocking over the telephone box, that would have all been done by a professional driver. It's the same with the scene, I think, in Mutiny on the Buses. When you see the monkey sitting on the steering wheel, you can see that's a back projection again. It's a technique they used quite a lot in the films. I think another scene when you know that it's a back projection as well, as I think it's at the very start of the first film. When you see Reg driving along, you can see its back projection and the back shot as well. Questions coming in, could be anything to do with on the buses, filming locations, cast, crew, the films, the TV series, the episodes, the events organised, some of the on the buses items that I make and sell in my shop, and the walking tours that I organise. Any questions like that, just post them up and I'll answer them as soon as I see them. No, none of them have been approached. Obviously, the motorbike scenes, the stuntman for that would have been Tex Fuller. He done a lot of the stunts that were on in the On the Buses films. Sadly, Tex passed away about it was only like maybe about a year ago, and he was like I think he was 92 or 93. Obviously, they all had stand-ins, obviously, who done stand-ins at rehearsals and stuff like that. But the stunts, Reg's stunts were all done by Tex Fuller. I'm not sure if Nosher Powell actually done any of the stunts on the buses. He may well have done this stunt of when Reg falls down the stairs at the turning around Betty's house, because Nosher was in that scene, and he was a fully fledged stuntman as well. He done a heck of a lot of stunt work in his time, did Nosher Powell. Can't stand the Harry Enfield parody. Sorry, helpful stuff if you're a fan, but I can't stomach it at all.
It's a bit how I feel about it. It's a bit like how the two Ronnies felt about. Well, Ronnie Barker felt about the sketch, the not the 9 o'clock news done on the two Ronnies. If you see what I mean, he saw it as a bit of a pardon the English, piss take of the two Ronnies' humour. I see Henry Enfield's parody, Harry Anfield's parody as the same, a piss take of on the buses. So I can't embrace it or like it or anything like that. But as for the stunt crews, obviously a lot of the stunt crews, the driver and stunt, the people who've done the driving of the buses and all of that, they'd be very hard to get hold of now. People like that. I know Tex passed away. I think he done the stunts on maybe all three of the films. I'm sorry if you're a Harry Enfield fan. I'm not saying I'm not. I don't like Harry Enfield's at all. But that parody of on the buses, nah, big no for me. So keep your questions coming in. I'll answer them as soon as I see them on the screen. As I say, feel free to hit that subscribe button as well for the channel, and you'll catch any of the new videos as soon as I post them up. Just to say another thing that I might throw in that depends how quick the day's going on the walking tours in Boreham Wood. I have mentioned it. I think I've mentioned it on here before, but you may remember the scene from Mutiny on the Buses. Now, if you're watching Mutiny on the Buses and the holiday, the Windsor Safari Park, that's where you assume all of it is filmed. But if you remember the scene when the chimps are leaping onto the back of the bus, climbing up the sort of like the flag thing that's hanging off the back of the bus and getting onto the bus that way, that wasn't actually filmed at the safari park. I do believe it was filmed. In fact, I'm 99.9% certain it's filmed in Boreham Wood, not the safari park, that particular scene. And so if I've got the time, if they were making good time during the walking tour on the Saturday, I will detour in and take up that and point out that location where I think that was filmed, although that's not been confirmed yet.
How did Olive meet Arthur? Well, that was covered in the episodes where they're having the flashbacks. So that would be when he's, I think that's the episode, Stansworth's Day. It covers how Arthur's coming round. He's looking for a room to let. When he's working in the hospital as a porter. So that's when he meets Olive. I think it's supposed to be 1960 or something like that when he meets her. Out there, all the on the budget locations, the toughest. It's generally the last one that I've found, because obviously that's taken the longest to find. But some of them that I've found lately have been ones that sort of like I've really bothered paying attention to. So the one that stands out at the moment, I would say, is the Terminus and the Perfect Clippy, which is in Kempsford Road, and then the area of Princes, which is sort of like in the larger area of Lambeth in London. That's where Olive's quoting the rule book, and then they all get off. And Olive reminds him again about drinking, leaving the bus unattended. So that was all filmed on Kempsford Road in the area of Princes. That took forever to find. Looked and looked. It was so hard to find because a big tool in finding these filming locations is by the use of things like Google Street View. So you can look around at street level by using Google Street View. But Kempsford Road, since they filmed on the buses there, the road has been shut off. Well, maybe not since they filmed on the buses there, maybe since about the 1990s, the road's been pedestrianised. So obviously, Google Street View doesn't allow you to look up there. So obviously, it's an area where if I've been looking around that area in the past, I've not been able to go right down and actually get a really good look at that area to pinpoint whether it was the location or not. That's why it was so far hard to find. So I would say that one. I mean, someone else fall into your lap. Like there's a bloke that lives down in the in Sussex, near Haywards Heath, where a few, I've not got down to photograph these ones yet. There's a few locations that haven't been found yet from on the omnibuses that he lived in that area, and he's certain that he knows the lane that they filmed down. So that wouldn't put that down to sort of like being one of the hardest when it falls into your lap like that. Ones that I spent ages and ages and ages going back looking over different parts of London for that terminus. So we'd say that one, Jacob here. So keep your questions coming in. If you've got any more questions, post them up and I'll answer them for you as soon as I see them. Like JKB there, ask some more about filming locations if you want. If it's anything to do with the cast or crew or anything to do with the walking tour that I just announced earlier on, feel free and ask away. would say as well, anyone that's thinking about coming to the walking tour, it will be £15 as the price that I'm putting on it, which is like for 2 tours spread over 2 days, which is damn good money because it's £12, I think, for an hour-long tour up in Edinburgh if you're doing walking tours up here for anything, and that's just for an hour long, whereas the two walking tours will probably last about 2.5 hours. So you're almost getting two for the price of what you get up here for just 1 hour, if you see what I mean. And it depends on the time as well, on how many can stretch out. I mean, where the first tour we're ending up, it's not all that far away from sort of like a fairly iconic location. So if we've got enough time and people feel up to it, I may be able to fit that in as well. But it must be stipulated that obviously there's going to be a lot of walking, so it really needs to be that you're up to doing that amount of walking, if you see what I mean. Can be probably be something like maybe 2 to 3 miles on the first tour on the Saturday, 2 to 3 miles on the second tour on the Sunday. So there's a lot of walking involved. So just be warned for that, if you see what I mean. I know that when I brought this up before and people said, why don't you hire a bus? Well, buses cost them more money than what it would be that I get back from even the ticket sales. So it's just counterproductive, if you know what I mean, on the cost front. It's just not viable, if you see what I mean. And if you start asking for more money for the tickets for the tours, you sell less tickets, so you're still not going to make enough money to hire out a bus anyway. Besides, on the walking tour, there's a lot of streets on Boreham Wood that a bus wouldn't be able to get to, if you see what I mean. So we can cover a lot more locations than what a bus possibly could. So any more questions, just keep them posting them up and I'll answer them. As long as I've got questions coming in, I'm happy to stay online for you. Okay, post up your questions. You got any questions, post them up. And I'll answer them when I see them on the screen. Questions have dried up a bit, so give it about another 10 minutes. If the questions haven't have totally dried up, then let's see, here's a question. Yeah, he was very diverse, helpful stuff. He was a very diverse actor. A lot of people only see him as being Jack, but he had much more strings to his bow than what people believe. Obviously, he'd done all sorts of stage work. He'd done Shakespeare as well, a lot of the classical stuff, done it all, if you see what I mean. Wrote his own stage shows. Some of them were big hits, so he really was much more of a talent than what a lot of people give him credit for, if you see what I mean. Done a lot of radio work as well, obviously script writing side of things as well, for like on the buses he wrote scripts for as well with Stephen Lewis. The walking tour at the moment, pencil in the date as Saturday the 18th of September and Sunday the 19th of September. So it'll be spread over 2 days, and it'd be £15 for the whole weekend, if you see what I mean. And you would obviously for yourself, I don't know how you fix them. I think you would be looking for a hotel stay, wouldn't you, Ian? But it'd be £15 for the 2 days. The tours will probably last about 2.5 hours each. So it'll be a 2.5 hour tour on the Saturday, 2.5 hour tour on the Sunday. I'll post up more details on my Facebook group as well. On the buses, the filming locations group as well. I'll probably do that in the next day or two, if you see what I mean. Well, he was London-based, Les. He had done a bit of TV work as well. I do believe he was a pundit on the 1970 World Cup for ITV. So obviously they felt he was confident in front of the cameras and all of that. Plus, on top of that, he did. I think around that time that he'd done that, he had been out with an injury, so he wasn't actually playing at the time. So that made it easier to get Bob in then as well. So it also like fell in place. Yeah, they fared well, if you know what I mean. They were both like I do believe they both fared in or around the top 10 of the films of that year. They weren't as popular as the first film, obviously. Mutiny on the Buses still was a good, healthy return at the box office, as was Holiday on the Buses, but nowhere near the smash hit that the first film was, if you see what I mean. But still healthy enough, but a good return for Hammer at that time, who were really struggling like that time for money, if you see what I mean. It's funny because a lot of your Hammer connoisseurs who are into all the horror films look down through their noses on the Buses and the other comedy films that turned out. But the On the Buses films in particular kept their precious horror films going, if you see what I mean. Because it was the comedy films that was bringing in the money. But if you speak to Hammer films, Hammer fans of the horror films, they all say, "Oh, the On the Buses films is a load of rubbish and all of that." You know what I mean? But they should learn to be a little bit more appreciative, because some of the horror films might not have been made. Hammer might have went bust if it wasn't for the likes of the On the Buses films. Yeah, you do. You do get those though, Greg. Believe you me, that will come out and say, if you go on the Hammer groups that are kicking around on Facebook, for example, the Hammer fans are forever slating the On the Buses films. They don't rate them at all. The main body of Hammer fans are really sort of like look down their noses at the On the Buses films, if you see what I mean. As for props exist, then not really, because if you think about it, if you think about it, the films were made like 50 years ago now. So none of those sorts of things would be getting kept beyond maybe about a 5-year span or something. So they weren't going to keep bits from the set like the settee or the chair or the table and all that, because they wouldn't be up to much after a while. So a lot of them would have been like happened with Barbara Windsor's famous bikini. That got tossed in the bin, and they only found it in the bin, if you see what I mean. So the on the buses stuff certainly weren't going to be getting kept, if you see what I mean. I know that the baby doll night is still around, because Anna, I think when it all came to finishing, they asked the cast if they wanted any items, and Anna Karen picked the baby doll nightie that she wore. So that might be it, probably, I would assume, at the end of Holiday on the buses, I would imagine. So obviously I know that still exists. Obviously you've got things like, I do think one of the motorbikes is still in existence possibly as well. But in terms of props, in terms of things like ticket machines and all of that, then I wouldn't have thought so. Right, Ian, did you get all that then for that date? I'll post that up on the Facebook group, my on the buses filming locations now and then. I'll post up the full details then, and how you can go about applying, asking for a ticket. We'll work out payment details and all of that. If you're interested, that'll all be on the buses group, or I might do a special video on here for people if they want to buy tickets, or tell them how they can go about it. Yeah, it would be the thing behind that is, though, Greg, what you've got to remember is, like, somebody posted this up on one of my videos, that Pontins was all about Fred Pontin. Fred Pontin owned Pontins at that time. So obviously that was his baby. He knew how to run a holiday camp and ploughed money in to have it refurbished whenever and all of that. Now, once he sold up, and other companies, I think the first company that bought it might have been either Whitbreads, who owned a lot of the pubs, and or Ladbrokes, I think, or was it Corals? They were the early owners of it after Fred Pontin had sold up. Once it fell out of Fred Pontin's hands and it went into ownership of these other companies like Whitbread, and I think more latterly like Britannia Hotel Group and all of that, they're not interested in refurbing the camp. They are out for a cash cow. They just want the camp there to make as much money as they can for it. They are going to pay minimal amount to refurb it. They're not going to spend millions of pounds to refurb a holiday camp. All they want it for is the amount of money that they can get out of people going in there, staying there, and using it as a cash cow. It's sad, but that's the fact of the matter. Whereas Fred Pontin loved it as his baby, these new companies have come in, taken it over, are only using it as a cash cow. Sad, but that's the way it is, I'm afraid. I suppose in one way you can be thankful, because otherwise it would have been flattened by now if these other companies hadn't come in and bought it out. So in one way you've got to be thankful for it, for them, keeping the memory alive, if you see what I mean. But they're not going to be throwing money into it to refurbish it and clean up the holiday camp, the chalets and all that. I suppose the problem with it as well, that these new companies, if you want to try and think of it from their point of view, if you think how many chalets there is in those holiday camps, oh, there's lots. There's about, I'd say there's probably about 40 blocks, and off the top of my head, and the Prestatyn one alone. So you think how much that would cost per block to rent, to do a proper good job restoration work and really clean them up. You're probably talking about £50,000 a chalet block. Multiply that by 40, and then it gets really eye-watering, if you see what I mean, about the amount of money that we'd need spent on it, if you see what I mean. For me, for that to happen, it would need somebody to take over that they were passionate about it, if you see what I mean. They were passionate about holiday camps and the part that they played for holiday makers in this country. But that's not the likes of the companies that have been in charge of it, like Britannia, Whitbread, Corals, those sorts of groups that have got their clutches on it in recent times. So keep the questions coming in. I'll answer them as soon as I see them on the screen. Well, it depends, Lee, Les. It depends on how much these companies are actually making out of it. I mean, they might be making a very good profit out of the running pontons and all that. So they might see it as, to hell with the poor reviews, as long as it's lining our pockets, we don't really care. You know, a lot of the hardcore fact of the matter in business nowadays is money talks. So if they're making the money out of it, and they're not having to spend too much money putting it back in, they don't care about bad reviews as long as they're getting a good payment from it, if you see what I mean. So they'll keep them, they'll keep running them, if you see what I mean. Yeah, Ponton's one in Blackpool. I know, fairness, Martin wasn't as iconic as the one in Prestatyn is, if you see what I mean. Plus, you've got to remember Blackpool. We're talking about Blackpool there. Blackpool was probably it's very strong in other areas, if you know what I mean, for accommodation. So they probably struggled to fill the one in Blackpool, the Pontins in Blackpool, because they had so much competition. Prestatyn's a little bit different. It's sort of like Pontins is the go-to place in Prestatyn, really. There are one or two other camps, but they've not got the pulling power that the Pontins has, if you see what I mean. Whereas in Blackpool, the Pontins name was probably small fry compared to where else it was available in Blackpool to stay in for holidaymakers. I mean, if you go to Prestatyn, I'll guarantee you there's not much in the way of hotels there. I don't think there's one chain hotel in Prestatyn. All there is the Beaches Hotel, which is a sort of like a poshish hotel out by the seafront. It's not a massive place, so that's not got a lot of rooms. And I know there's a hotel that's got a few rooms above a public house in Prestatyn, but that's about it. So you can see what I'm saying here, that Blackpool has got loads of hotels, probably a lot of other camps like Pontins. So there's a lot of competition that Pontins couldn't live with in Blackpool. Whereas in Prestatyn, the Pontins rules the roost. So if you've got any more questions, post them up and I'll answer them for you. See how it goes in the next few minutes. If it's died off to the degree that it has in the last few minutes, 8 o'clock I'll call a halt. But if we get more questions coming in, I'm happy to stay online and answer.
Okay, it's gone a little bit quiet in here, so I've been online for a couple of hours now, so I'm going to call it a night. Just to say thanks to everyone for popping in, asking their on the buses questions. Those people who are looking for information on the walking tour, I'll post it up on the Facebook page. I may do another video here on it as well, specifically for that walking tour with the details. And I'll maybe do a video, as I say, or look out for more details on the buses, the filming locations, or if anybody haven't got access to any of them, there's my email address for if they've got any questions about the walking tour or would like to reserve a ticket. I'll just post up my email address up there just now. Okay. So say good night for now, and thank you very much for joining me this evening. I'll say goodbye for now.